It's day 2, end of day 2 of Anthropy, not day 3, John. But
Okay.
it feels a little bit
It's
like a 3-day. It's been quite a
third
long
week.
day. What have you experienced today then?
Well, I've been to slightly more sessions, just drifting in like a jellyfish and wobbling on the edges. And one I really loved was one this morning in the Mediterranean citrus area with David Williams chairing, but Paul Rose, the
Oh, he was
polar
brilliant, yes.
explorer, and talking about place, but just talking about elements of his life story and sort of up in the Arctic Circle and engaging with the Inuit communities and so on. And some of the comments and questions from the audience, I think, were really, really thoughtful. So I find it actually rather stimulating.
No, I agree. And I think, so we had one of our panels today, which again was quite intimate, but very powerful. And we had a couple of people sort of in tears discussing these things, which I think is needed. I think we have to both have the intellect and the head as well as
there was about
that
40
heart.
people there, and so what would our impact metric be? We would like 29 3/4 of them to be in tears by the end of the process.
I don't think we have to make it an impact metric, but I do think that people feeling something, not just thinking something. And one of the things that's been interesting for me has been a lot of the audience has, of course, also been speakers. So you've got experts everywhere. And so the questions to the panelists, the questions from the audience have been fantastic and really well informed. And you don't often get that. Sometimes you start from scratch with a question.
No, I think Anthropy, if it was ever run again, could learn from some of the things that haven't worked quite so well this time. But I've got to the point now where I thought, oh my God, this has been really worth being part of. And I've learned a lot, met a lot of people, got into some very deep conversations. And just sometimes just being waylaid by people in sort of odd spots and corners. So,
we've recorded our sessions at least, and I'm glad of that because I wish all of them had been recorded. Really,
I do too.
I do think there's a lot of things that you inevitably miss because you have a brilliant, deep, serendipitous conversation walking somewhere and getting waylaid.
But if it was filmed, then
you could go back to
people wouldn't say some of the things that they say.
Very true, very true.
Anyway.
Yeah, there's been quite a lot of very direct comments about the reluctance and the cautiousness of business and finance leaders in particular, and government actually, to really get their stuff together and step up rather than falter.
I think one of the most interesting sessions I went to, again relatively small, but was on ecocide and the use of the law in order to force business and financial markets and governments to do things that they're not always minded to do, or not with the necessary urgency and so on. That was a fascinating process, and I heard some things that I'd never heard there before.
Wine intrinsically has a place-based element to it. People understand that wine comes from a certain place and there's a certain scarcity. That isn't the case with clothing. It is the case with food a little bit, but it's not the case with everything. So I think to make the world a bit more like wine.
The panel that you chaired in the rainforest biome, say a little bit about who the panelists were, because it was one of the most well configured and the sessions I've been to here, and the response I thought was glorious. But a lot of it went to wine and romance, so that's not surprising.
Well, exactly. You go with wine and romance, you win everybody over. So that was our panel on sort of business models and business place in place-based regeneration, really. And we had 3 amazing panelists, and I think that does it all. We had Pauline Silverman, who has led the regeneration work for SEPA in Scotland at the Leven, amazing work up there. We had Anna Chow, who's CEO of Pucker Herbs, a brilliant businesswoman, and obviously Pucker works with organic farmers across the world to create these amazing teas. And then we had Nick Keppel-Palmer, who's the founder of the Good Growth Company, which I've, as you know, been involved with and tried to advise for a few years, where they're really doing landscape-driven regeneration and supply chain. So saying, what can this landscape hold to be healthy as a natural ecosystem.
And it was Nick who brought up the idea of wine almost as a model for terroir-based or local
Exactly. The fact
production.
that wine, we all appreciate it because of it being place-based and
Yeah.
we know where it is, whereas clothing and fibres, which is what he's working in, we don't know where the fibres are. I think the stat he came up with was astounding, was that clothing companies, only 14% of them know which country the fibres that they use come from.
Let alone the field or the region.
Exactly, or the
whatever.
farmer,
Yeah.
which basically means that whoever is growing that fibre or raising the cattle or whatever it is, doesn't get the value of the provenance.
Yeah.
It was a really interesting panel because we got lots of interactions from the audience again. Again, that has been one of the brilliant things, I think. All in, day 2, success. That said, I am my brain is buzzing with lots of conversation and I need a little bit of time.
Well, thank you for listening, and we will now retire for an evening of wine and romance.
Like more of the wine, less of the romance. What is it, day 2? It's not day 3. You thought it was day 3. It's only day 2.
Is it only day 2 3/4?
Oh man.